that came out of that. There we go. Was trying to form the nucleus of of the R3V or LTRG slash working group for placemaking community engagement might be. And sort of the overarching mission was how do we make places like the fortified properties, the hotels, and the parks that are taking part in the FEMA direct housing mission. How do we make those places feel more like home? Was sort of the main question. And through that, we set a couple priorities. One, sort of establishing that working group. And again, to echo Stephen, right now is the place of invitation, just like when Julie presented us to the LTRG. We want to make sure that working group is inclusive of a variety of folks, and whoever wants to get involved, because there are many ways into this topic for sure. And also wanting to root it in a confirmation of community needs, wants and offers from those affected. The conversation today with William North and was really good in just understanding what the processes are at the hotels, and making sure that everybody's aligned. And when we ask what people want, we're asking it not too many times and in a very trauma-informed way. And then finding out how we coordinate approval and funding processes. How do we get access to the hotels to do maybe community engagement activities? How do we get approval from the park owners to do things like community gardens or landscaping or places that lend a sense of permanence and provide a foundation for community building. So those are the priorities. We are, right now presenting to the R3V some of the ideas in there. Julie presented last week to the LTRG, I believe. Coordinating initial meetings with jurisdictions and public entities. Of course, some of the cities will need to be involved, but as well, DHS that is running the MAST and the hotels, and OHCS where they're involved, and then FEMA, of course, and finding ways to get onto the properties and do things. Making sure that we're, like I said, rooted in sort of community listening and just the expressions of desire and need from the community. So we don't want to come with them with too much. We want to let some of those ideas percolate up. But of course, we couldn't help ourselves talking about all the different ways we could start some of that community building process. Again, supporting what's already there. Erica just did a great outline about the commemoration of the anniversary from what's happening in that arena. And then also we had a good talk with Unete and understanding what they're already rolling out within the sort of the hotel environment, some of the workshops they're doing with adults, and some of the really important work that they're already doing. And so rather than coming over the top with all these ideas, we want to figure out who's already doing this work and how can we support them as a community, and with the multiple organizations kind of playing a role in support. One of the ideas that came from Darlene actually was a bus tour for community members who want to get engaged with the recovery and understand what is going on. That landed sort of in the sort of the zone captain's zone, but really I feel like there are a lot of people out there who constantly posting, constantly asking what is going on. And of course, Juxana is always sharing that one graphic, and we're gonna be updating that graphic really soon to make sure that the housing graphic is up to date, and working with Julie on that. But really taking people around by bus potentially, and showing them where affordable housing, where the missions are, the gateway, the FEMA missions, where they're landing, and so they can see a real physical manifestation of all this recovery work, and really get a sense of how the ground is laid out, and start understanding what's going on and what's coming down the pipeline. So it's really about just kind of educating people up that want to be engaged in that process. So that was an idea. The communities that we're talking about being served are the RV parks that are out at Immigrant Lake, and some of the other ones that are hosting survivors there. The hotels that are part of the turnkey funding. So we have multiple names now. Some of them were known as the Ramada and the Common Lodge, and the Commons, they're being renamed by Fortify. So we're having now use two names a little bit, but we have the numbers of people that are there and want to be talking to them. And then the three direct housing missions that are being supported by FEMA in the mobile home parks in Talent, and then two in Phoenix. And then of course wanting to involve the Gateway in this too. So we're kind of just like, who is the audience for this? Where do we need to build community? One thing that's not mentioned there is if we're doing some short-term things such as container gardens, or if we're doing activations that may be more of a temporary nature, can we then make those permanent in some of the residential neighborhoods that were burned out by donation to people that are rebuilding? I mean, some of the places that are rebuilding, you can't move in until you have landscaping, right? And if we're doing temporary landscaping in some of the, in a place that can't stay permanently, can we support those rebuilds by donating landscaping to the people that are building their homes back? So we talked about a lot, different priorities. I know security is a big one that residents are bringing up and elevating in the hotels, and ones that feel a sense of safety and just sort of wellness and being able to be in a place where they feel like it's safe. Potential play structures and areas, gardening and landscaping. Master gardeners is in here because one of our zone captains is a master gardener who lived in one of the mobile home parks and just really wants to start planting gardens, and everyone that got a FEMA trailer and making sure they can harvest squash by the end. It might take a little bit longer, but there's some really good energy there. And finding natural partners there is the Pollinator Project, maybe Plant Oregon. Can we support organizations that are much more directly doing this kind of work already and bringing their skills to bear and their resources to bear? So we just mentioned a lot of different things. Storage is a big one for people in like the FEMA trailers, for instance, or people in the hotels. Where can they put their stuff that's not like living on top of it? Can we create options for that? Yeah, so there's kind of placemaking parts like lighting shade pathways, community gardens, etc. And then there's sort of the community engagement, so the social amenities, creating culture and community in place. So meeting some of those basic needs, the RAC and Road Climate are already working on various ways of doing some of that outreach and transforming their stationary shop into maybe a more of a mobile thing. And so meeting some of those needs through that organizations, skill building, vaccinations, understanding the need in the hotels, if that is a great need, and how can we support that kind of rollout there. Art, music, movement, food, education, mental health. I mean, these are all ways that that we can help foster a sense of community and home and belonging. And so as the LTRG and as R3V and as various organizations that are involved, can we make a foundational place for that to happen? And then can we also harness some of the energy from the community that was there in the days after the fire when we all just wanted to kind of put gloves on and start rebuilding our towns? Can we kind of re-engage that energy a little bit, specifically like maybe around the anniversary, say, or in the aftermath of the anniversary? Can we revisit that kind of community outpouring of support and really make this a valley-wide effort? So that's some of the things that we're talking about. I think one of the next steps is figuring out not necessarily who holds it. I think we all kind of hold it, but maybe is there a way to simplify this and coordinate this so that there's some sort of lead around it, and whether that happens within the auspices of R3V working group or whether that's part of the emotional and spiritual care of the LTRG. I think there's various ways both organizations or coalitions can support a single kind of movement forward on that. So that's what we discussed, and that's the update I have.
That's great, Tucker. Thank you for that. Do we have any questions for Tucker? And okay, jump in if you have any. And really one of the purposes of R3V is to coordinate action. That list included all kinds of organizations, represents all kinds of services and organizations across the Valley. So if you have any ideas for how how we might coordinate, the collective impact, which is what the model we're trying to work through, is about mutually reinforcing activities towards a shared goal. We all want the people in temporary housing to have a better experience than they have today. But how can we coordinate our activities to make that more real? So Tucker, who are you the point of contact, or who should people reach out to if they want to contribute an idea or figure out how to plug in?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about how to add to that document. I have a different document that maybe I could share that is open for editing if people want to throw ideas in there. One thing we didn't talk about sort of today was some of the things we talked about on funding, right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do this. There's the philanthropic side, there's sort of the agency side, and then there's sort of the individual donation / sort of local businesses side. So there's a document, I'll put the link in here in the chat. If you have ideas or want to be contacted, I'm sure that we could arrange a way to to have a follow-up meeting. I know that was also desired, is let's have a follow-up meeting with a lot more of the people who want to be involved, more of a size like this.
Yeah, well, so actually, we've thought about this. Actually, I should have remembered. We're going into breakout rooms in just a minute, and this is one of the breakout rooms that you can choose to join. So yes, so we will have a breakout room around the commemoration. Maybe Erica, you can jump into that, and anybody who wants to talk about that can be in there for 20 minutes with you. And then we'll have another breakout room on this kind of how do we bring community and placemaking to the temporary housing situations. And then I was thinking that we might have a couple of others as well. One is on, one of our purposes for R3V is to kind of build trust and understanding and coordination across the sectors, right? So we are mainly nonprofit folks. There are some government people who come, but there's a lot more coordination that we could do with our government partners. And that's kind of another question that we step into. How do we build that process, starting from where we are and getting somewhere where we're really working together in a more creative way, a more efficient way. And then the other question, so Christine, I see, can we do a working group rotation through, you mean in the breakout rooms today?
Yeah, it just seems, it seems kind of counterintuitive for me personally to choose between going to Erica or Tucker's. I want to participate in both, and I think they both actually intertwine in many ways. So
you agree? So should we break it into two different sections? We'll do 10 minutes and
I think we just swap. Yeah,
okay.
Because I think everyone in this space is probably interested in supporting both. And frankly, in the end, what we'll see is I think hopefully a coming together of all of us supporting each other, period.
Or we can just all stay in this room. We're not so many people
That's
that we
true.
can just stay here and just go through this.
I know, I want to go to Erica's breakout group.
I know.
Okay, all right. So let's have one giant breakout room. It'll be a big party.
We'll just have a community conversation.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, perfect. So one other question that we have that I will cycle through just at the end of this meeting, which is really about how do we work towards equity and inclusion? It's not just a program that we add into the side. I think our next meeting will be all about, our big meeting will be all about how do we work this into the dough of everything that we're doing? And like, how functionally can we do that? And I would love to have a community conversation with all of you about that. We'll tee that up at the end of this meeting, but that will really be a full meeting that we do on August 25th. So anyway, so let's not do breakout rooms. Let's just now have a conversation. Why don't we, because we've just talked about Tucker's, this kind of temporary housing situation, why don't we start there? And just anybody who has questions or ideas, this is the time for open mic.
Could you share that document with us, Tucker, so we can look at it?
I'm just putting it into the chat now. I was kind of, maybe I'll take some notes in this document while this discussion happens. Unless you want to, Katie. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, yes, I'm happy to.
Okay. I'm sure there'll be plenty for both of us.
Great.
Stephen, this is Bill Thorndike. I think it would be really good to engage with all the local Rotary clubs that put together an entity that, was basically put in place to help workers replace tools and equipment that they needed for their jobs. But it would seem to me, particularly my Rotary Club, Medford Road Rotary, has been so involved in putting up playgrounds and doing that right, working with the schools and stuff. But I think it would be a good idea to re-engage with the Rotary groups. And I know that Commissioner Dotterer, of course, is very interested in working with that, but that might be a place where we could offer some tangible, or they could offer some tangible volunteer labor, materials, resources to actually address some of those questions that we have on some of the temporary housing facilities.
The Rotary was mentioned in the longer document that I just shared, and then thanks for clarifying that. I think it's kind of under sort of funding and support. We talked a little bit about the Rotary, but I would love it if you're the point of contact for that, Bill.
Yeah, I'll get you. I'll get us connected with, because they have some sort of a network that's already in place between the Rotary clubs. So let's try and go through that. I think that's the best way. I'll get a name and contact.
Bill, and I think that actually brings up a really important point, right? I know a lot of us have done a lot in this recovery. I'm sorry, they're building a TV bar or something next door to me. But I know that a lot of us have asked a lot of community partners, right? And just funders in general. So I think it's really important for us to loop back to those folks, because we still have a lot we need to ask of them. And so I think those updates are going to be really important. So I would really like to help support that sort of bus tour project, because I think that some of the messaging that's out and around community is really kind of dismal. And justifiably so. I want to say that there's some very deep equity issues that are external and internal and all of that in between. But I think that we need to be able to highlight what's going well so we can keep asking for more. So it's a both and situation.
Yeah, I know with this, the So Ready annual meeting that we held in Phoenix included renting the Jacksonville trolley, because we were parking at Ray's Market. So we didn't clog up all the parking at the Phoenix Community Center. But a vehicle like that, again, it's like you say, it creates a certain kind of panache of, you're sitting in this, and even in Phoenix, they circled around so that people could see some of the recovery and damage in the city of Phoenix. But no, I think that would be really fascinating opportunity to offer, to the chambers of commerce, to So Ready, as let's set a few opportunities to ride in a trolley and actually see what's going on at the ground level. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I'm happy to tap some of my extension colleagues who know so much more about sort of the ecology and ecological impacts of fire and what that looks like in the recovery process, because we're still seeing some phenomenal recovery in that realm too, which has been, I know with the Eagle Creek fire, they did a walkthrough with the elementary kiddos to see sort of that restoration process, because I think it helps us connect to that natural element, which can help our own recovery and resilience in that space as well. So we have a regional fire expert, with the land stewards, we have grassland specialists, we have all sorts of nerds that love talking to people about it. So
is that something that might be able to be wrapped into the walk, Karen or Erica? And I also think about like Loma Katsi. I remember a week or a month after the fire, I was down there kind of at the beginning where the fire started on a big meeting with a bunch of people. And Loma Katsi talked about how they had done that pond work down there. It was really kind of inspiring to understand, and how the fire came through, and they were like, we welcome the fire, and it's just kind of part of the ecology of this place, and that work is not undone by this. So I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe I can connect with you, Karen.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're also hoping to do like restoration, like native plant restoration along the Greenway, kind of like, as something like as an action. So then that way we can plant like future seeds, plant seeds for future generations. And so that's one thing that we'd want to do along the Greenway, is to do some of that plant restoration. And I think I know Anna had a group in mind that would be willing to donate the plants, the seeds, and all of that, and facilitate that activity. But it'd be great to just have the youth, and the elders, and just anyone who would want to be part of that along the Greenway. So great.
So this is Christina. I keep thinking about the people that are not able-bodied for both scenarios, and I keep thinking, are there adequate support mechanisms for people that need to get to and from appointments? Are there opportunities for us to have that be a type of community feeling opportunity that we provide, where maybe we buddy up with people or set up some type of, you know, connection for people that are staying in hotels or other places that maybe aren't able to really get themselves somewhere. I feel like that is a great, you know, no one gets left behind opportunity.
Yeah.
Is that something we can add to the list?
And I think we have some good partners in that work, particularly through RV-COG, both of the CCOs. And then I know ODHS has been supportive of some of those pieces as well, and RVCD. So, and then also, what's the other one? Living Ops, right? They do a lot of work with folks with developmental disabilities.
So they would be a great pathway to kind of connect and get a sense of, you know, what does this look like?
And how we can offer supports in those places, yeah.
I think it would also be really great to kind of celebrate and honor the groups and organizations that actually have been, you know, picking up kids, for example, and taking them to Kids Unlimited, that have children that have been staying in hotels and just kind of in the furthest reaches. So I think there's a good opportunity there too.
That's a really interesting question, Christina, that you just brought up. And that is, I wonder, in terms of the commemoration, how we're honoring all of the people in our community who stepped into this. Not only first responders, of course, them, but also just all the bike brigade folks and just all the amazing people on this call and everywhere else who stepped into that moment. And I'm just wondering how we might hold that.
Yeah,
I've been thinking about it, whether or not we would get, you know, a plaque or something. But there are so many small businesses that really were anchors to people in the community. And so many of them are just struggling to keep their businesses going now, you know.
Yeah.
But there are also families that have been just there and engaged and making the calls and making the food. And so.
This is Thorndike again. It would be wonderful to figure out how we could connect either with KSYS or JPR or Southern Oregon University or the Southern Oregon Historical Society. What goes through my mind is, what should we be putting down on paper or through images so that in 30 years from now, when somebody says, I heard about this fire, this Alameda fire back there in 2020, what was it all about? And it just seems like if we could somehow, through some of the different organizations, ask for people who would act as recorders to get all that information and then maybe have it archived at the university or at the Southern Oregon Historical Society. It just seems like it's an opportunity to also try and again collect the complete story that then can be utilized in the future. And I think that's another area that I think we could probably find resources for to help augment the time and effort of people doing that. And I know we don't have a lot of time, it's almost August right now. Again, it just seems like somehow we need to figure out, how do we capture this information so that it does become part of our knowledge base.
SOU has some students who are trained up in emerging and digital media, right? That could be an interesting resource for us. But we can check into that. Katie, if you'll make a note, I can reach out to the folks at the university around that. And maybe with Mark Yaconelli and your whole group there, Erica, there's some kind of a StoryCorps kind of booth or something where people can walk in and tell their story and have it recorded.
Exactly. Second that. Because that's so important, like on the day when things are coming up again, when people are going to get triggered, there's that side of things too, we've really got to ensure that the support is there, that, you know, there is that safe space that they can go to, you know, when we've got a lot of people around too, it's going to be some overwhelm and some triggering of trauma. So, but one of the things that I was going to suggest for that in the moment piece, maybe, you know, so you have that intro of the walk and everything, and then a timing set at the end where we all gather for a ritual. We honor, you know, everyone gets to honor both themselves and everyone else who's stepped forward and who's put into this, and just taking that moment, and we can do some kind of ceremony just to honor, you know, this huge impact that it has had, but knowing that, you know, that this demonstrates the compassion and the love that we hold, that we know will carry us all forward. So something that unites everyone. And having a booth where you can collect those stories in the moment, on the day, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. And I just wanted to echo what, and there's like so much like fruitful conversation happening here, even just what Christina mentioned about accessibility, you know, and the story thing, that was kind of the reason we went to the Phoenix the Phoenix Town School District, is we did want to capture those stories. But I know that there is like a lot of hesitation, you know, for that trauma to come up, you know, and we're not trained mental health counselors. And so like, I'm wondering if, you know, other people that have more capacity, maybe like, you know, Stephen, what you were saying about the SOU, to create an archive, you know, that can live somewhere in our community, that can capture the story of the fires here in Southern Oregon. Because there's so many written articles that interviewed a lot of community members, and they're just living out there, like, you know, on, well, social media, but also just on the internet. But if there could be like an online archive, and I know that Kay just mentioned the Umpqua Community College shooting, they have a whole website that's dedicated to that story project. So I was just like, you know, I had that idea, I just don't have the capacity. Like, you have to create an online archive that can have all these different resources, articles and stories of community members. So then that way, if any, you know, middle school, elementary school, or high schooler wants to do research, they can go and read those stories, you know, like 10 years from now, 15 years from now.
That's great. And yeah, we can handle some of the technical back end pieces of that. And, you know, we all have an amazing recording device right here.
Right.
Some of us have video of the day, some of us have pictures, but we could all turn on our voice recorder and create a file and email it. Maybe that might be the easiest way, to have one email address where it all comes in. But we could certainly handle putting together a web page around that. So, okay, this is beautiful conversation. Anybody? Thoughts on the commemoration, or on bringing kind of placemaking and sense of community to temporary housing?
And I'm just gonna mention, I'm grabbing the chat notes too. I'm kind of for Katie, I'm grabbing the chat notes and trying to put them in the right place. But if anything, if I'm following through, please.
Well, we are recording this. We will post this. So, you know, we're working out our moves internally, but we do create a post out of every meeting. We will have the video and the chat transcript and all of that available, you know, up online. So people who miss, or if you want to go back and hear another part again. But yes, we will capture all that.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts on, maybe I'll bring in another topic here and see if it sparks any other conversation around our work with jurisdictions and with other organizations who aren't normally represented here. Does anybody have thoughts about how we can kind of build up that trust and find our swim lanes? You know, they have so much that they're responsible for. They're heads down, totally overwhelmed. I think everybody in local government is overwhelmed at this state, and state government. But how can we find new ways of working together and build new relationships that aren't there? Any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Marta.
Thank you. Kind of a long-term project, but several communities impacted by the Alameda fire and the open chain are submitting, like right now, for, for the future, hazard mitigation grant program applications, FEMA funded, state administered. I think in the next few months, this group can be crucial in celebrating the communities for that work on that, right? Because that's resiliency. And jurisdictions are shouldering it with their own teams, capacity, some consultants as well. And I know Hector's on the call. He knows exactly how like the city of Talent's doing it, but Phoenix is doing it. A couple of others are doing it. There is resiliency work being done in the aftermath of this disaster. I think that would be a good opportunity to celebrate what they're doing and just the amazing thing that they're doing since stepping up. I don't want to say since day one, since hour zero. So that's coming, and if we can celebrate all of them all at once, or as those funding victories come in and the work gets done, because it's going to be happening in the neighborhoods, right, in the footprint or around it. Just something to keep on the radar.
That's a great thought, Marta. The city, I mean, local staff and elected officials are in many ways unsung heroes, and they take a lot of slings and arrows from the community, but they're not very good at tooting their own horns, right? I would think every local jurisdiction has a hard time getting their message out in a way that lands with the public. So maybe by celebrating some of these victories in our newsletters with the LTRG, et cetera, that might be a really useful first step. That's great.
And Liz raised her hand.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Liz James. I always like to share my pronouns she, her, or they, them. And I do a variety of volunteer work, including I'm a AARP volunteer here in the Valley. I'm what is called their Livables community liaison. And I also serve on RVCOG Senior and Disability Senior Advisory Council. And I think this event that's being planned, Erica, I'm just like to the moon and back over this. I think it's wonderful. So this is a short-term thought about how to engage people and educate organizations. I can't imagine that there would be, this is a wonderful opportunity for people to brand and provide some financial support and some marketing support for this. So and maybe part of what you're going to be doing is sending out a solicitation letter for that support. But I feel pretty certain AARP, I'm just a volunteer, so I can't make a commitment, but this is right up their alley in terms of really being a community support organization. And there's a lot of AARP members here in the Valley, and they support people of all ages. And RVCOG does obviously great work, and I think they would be interested as well. So just a thought.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I think one thing that I was really big for on, just trying to put this together is like no logos. Like this is just a community effort. I think if people want to show up and like say, I want to support in this way, or I want to volunteer, then that's great, just because we don't want it to become like, oh, well, I'm helping lead this, like we don't care about egos in this. It's like, we just want to create a platform or like a space for community healing. And I was just gonna write in the chat, I think this commemorance is like, we really want to focus on like the healing of our community that was impacted by the fire. Like, we don't want to celebrate like the leaders that have been doing the recovery work. I think there could be a different space for that. I think for this specifically just for the healing and an emotional support for the folks who lost their home. And then we can probably plan something else where we can get together and have drinks and like celebrate all you wonderful people and others that have been doing this recovery work, just so then that way, just wanted to say that out loud.
And I think that's an important distinction, because folks who lost their homes don't need to know how burned out a lot of us are, right? But we also need to be able to commiserate with each other. So I think there's that sort of external facing versus internal challenge. But I do think that both are appropriate. And I agree with Erica in sort of separating that space.
I want to speak to that as a zone captain. And I totally hear that we need to be sensitive and not make it about us. But as a fire survivor who's helping other fire survivors connect with zone captains, I was hoping this would be a great visibility opportunity for us to be able to connect with people and get them funneled into their zone. So then they can actually get their needs assessed, but they get resources. So I'm hoping we can find that balance of, like, maybe we don't need to all show up with our zone captains t-shirts on, but maybe we can have a booth or something to really help people funnel into those resources, because there's, you know, we're a real pipeline for people.
Kathy,
and a lot of
I'd
people don't know
argue
we exist.
Right.
You should wear your shirts.
Yeah, Kathy, thank you for saying that. And honestly, that's why I wanted to reach out. And I know Joxana's going to reach out to Tucker May. They've been in conversation because we are hoping that the zone captains can lead some of the neighborhood, tents. So then that way, it could be a tent for Arno's. It can be a tent, and I would have to look and figure out, maybe working with you all, figuring out what the neighborhoods are. So that way there's like a table for each neighborhood and people can be like, oh, I want to put, a note on here. And so I think there is going to be a place for resources and transparency overall, and like just other resources and things that are happening with the rebuilding, because I think a lot of people don't know what's going on. It's not that they don't know, or maybe they just haven't kept up. So I think there also needs to be that, like you said, like that balance. So that way they are aware what's going on and they can ask those questions. So I think some tabling, will be important. And so that will be like the extra. And I think on Saturday, we're hoping that it could just be like that healing. And on Sunday, where it's like the activities, then there could be like more resources and like different tabling for different organizations. So then that way people are like, hey, like, and they can go and touch base with different organizations and get information that they need.
Just a quick question. So just for clarity, because I read the notes. So from the families that kind of I've been working with and talking, they want kind of that somber moment. It's something where they're coming to grieve the loss of their home, their livelihood, everything they worked with. Sunday looked more like, which also happens to be September 11th, the commemoration of 9/11. So that kind of was what I read. Okay, 9/11 is a little more somber, but then the Sunday sounded a little more upbeat-ish, and I'm just not sure how sensitive that must be to some families, because we have families that are living in office spaces and being charged the rate of a home, crammed RVs, crammed hotel rooms, and there has to be like this fine balance, because I wouldn't want to trigger somebody who's in a really rough situation to come to a commemoration event that maybe hits the wrong tone, because at that point we would be doing more harm than good. That would be my only caution on the Sunday event, where that's my reservation personally, speaking as somebody that has been working there since the hours of the fire.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's something that's been on our mind. Like, how do we provide that emotional support? Because yeah, you're right. Like, some people are gonna get obviously gonna relive that trauma again, and just even going back to their neighborhoods or to Talent or Phoenix. And so that's why we really want to make sure that there's people that can support, like mental health coaches, especially like, people that are actually bilingual too. Like, that's really big because our Latinx community was impacted. So, Lucy, like, I'm glad that you raised that, because it has been in our back of our mind and we're constantly thinking about that. And, this is going to be really healing. Like, we're going to have danzantes. So there's going to be a lot of medicine people Saturday and Sunday. So that way, every day there's like a ritual, and that people can pray together and be together. And so we're really like, we're holding that. So, and we're, I guess, connecting all the dots right now. But I'll follow up when we have, more things coming together.
I think that's great, Erica, and I like that you've broken it into 2 different days so people can choose which one serves them in that moment. But Christine, I'm really interested, because I know that Winter Spring, you work on this feeling the grief, but also moving into what's next. And I don't know if it's too early for that, but I'm really curious about your experience and how you guys hold that.
Yeah, I mean, when we have memorial events, there's it's literally divided between, you know, that point of you share the memories, you are somber, of course, and you honor that, and there's that very compassionate moment of allowing and accepting that this sadness and sorrow has to be moved. We have to feel it. We have to, you know, mourn. And so you have that component, which I can see with the walk occurring and the other things that are going on. When it's done mindfully, that brings the awareness of the feelings, and these things are going to happen. And yes, you know, you can have people around that are trained, and we have you know, all our volunteers are trained, and we have some that have that extra trauma background. Right. So, but to speak to the other piece, you know, it's important to be able to, you know, lend our voices in song, and also to know that there's hope and there's light and there's things to move forward to. So, you know, how we generally do it is we have that first section of, you know, that active mourning, and then you move into there, you know, this time that will be moving into transformation, but it's not all done, and it's not linear. You know, grief's chaotic. Yeah. And even with the understanding of stages, it doesn't work linearly. You know, it's more of a spiral. So, so with that in mind, yeah, you choose and you pick those celebratory type things done in a sacred way. You can have music, but it doesn't have to be, you know, like a crazy party. It's you know, again, it's with discernment. But I think that structuring of the first day and then the second day, and with those ideas up front, that should work, you know, because we can't, you know, the whole idea of active and healthy mourning is that you also understand it's okay to feel light. You know, I've not got to spend my whole time in grief and in pain and sorrow. It's all right to have a day where I feel a little light and hopeful and grateful that I'm here, you know, I've made it through. Let's move on. But again, you know, leaving that past unhappiness and sorrow behind and bringing forward all of the wonderful memories. And there were lots of beautiful memories of community, you know, like Kathy was saying about connecting. You know, she was there, she was a part of it, and she knows people from her community, so reconnecting with them. And I think this is a huge opportunity for people to reconnect with each other, and that remembering. So there's, you know, there's multiple elements here. You know, it's not going to be easy, and things are going to happen. You know, things are going to get triggered, but if we're there with compassion and kindness and support, then it can be a wonderful opportunity for more healing and deeper healing. And knowing that, you know, you've got to break through to break free. And that's what all of this is about. So thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Christina, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a second to just kind of acknowledge that this is a great opportunity to exercise trust building with each other, and to just acknowledge that we recognize how sensitive of a topic this is and how we all feel stirred and should we celebrate. But commemorating and celebrating goes a lot deeper than, you know, it's not like we're planning a beer garden. You know, I mean, there are some actual traditions that people of the land that want to share. And I agree with the discernment remark, and I appreciate that you acknowledge that there are many stages in grief, because that's what this is, and that there are also many stages in healing. So thank you. I think now would be a really good time for everybody to take some really lovely deep breaths. And just breathe all of that away.
Yeah.
I just want to express my gratitude for everybody here and the way that we as a community are working together. I mean, it's been a really a powerful time, sharing of so many different voices, so many different resources and perspectives. And this, to me, is what the promise of our community, and R3V is just a little pocket of it is. So thank you, each of you, for investing your part of your day in making this real, sharing this experience, because this itself is part of our commemoration and part of our honoring of what is, what was, and what is, and what wants to be. So it's beautiful. Does anybody else have any thoughts about the commemoration, about how we're working together, about healing, about making place and community when our home is no longer available? Any more thoughts on that?
Can I throw a small little wet blanket on this conversation? You know, as someone who spent a lot of time working directly with survivors in the immediate aftermath and through the first part of this year, one of the things I saw time and time again was people wanting to access survivors. And so I want to make sure that we are being very mindful about avoiding that sort of push from organizations. I think Erica sort of hit the nail on the head about logos and opportunities to like help our organization shine, right? Not the place, not the space, not the time. And so as we're talking about accessing survivors, that needs to be really tended to in the idea of that we are working with community partners who are already serving survivors and helping to elevate zone captains, right? As sort of that conduit for getting our messaging out, because no one needs to know who I am. It doesn't matter who I am. At the end of the day, as an individual, I can't do much for you. And I don't live in your community, but I can help massage things in the background to make your experience better. So that's just a wet blanket statement I wanted to put in there.
I consider that to be speaking the truth, which to me is never a wet blanket. So thank you for that. And I think that we should, I mean, maybe Erica, in your document, we put that statement that we're agreeing to work together in this way, and that we're centering personal experience and personal healing in this, and that there is no place for organizational aggrandizement or any other purpose except for that. So I totally agree with you, Karen. And Erica, thank you for holding that as well. And yeah, this is the good work. Anything else that we should talk about today? Okay. What I will say is that the last thing on my list is that we're going to be having a little bit of a break. We're going to take off. Our next cycle would be 2 weeks from now, we would have a meeting, but we will be away at that time and taking a little breather. And then we'll be back for August 25th. I'm sorry, we'll send out a placeholder for you. But we'll be back on Wednesday, August 25th, and we'll be talking about how do we work equity and inclusion, not as something extra pasted on, but into the heart of our work. And so if you have any thoughts on that, please throw them in the chat now, or we will just have a full conversation like this one, I hope, around that topic. And anybody who you think, so this is a great thing. And lead up to that, anybody like ELIB's person who he just spoke to, I can't remember her name, Alessandra or something like that. Anybody who like her who you think should be included in our conversation, mainly local people, hopefully, who can help us to get our heads around how do we do this? How can we do this really well? Please reach out, email me, email anybody on the R3V steering committee, and we will reach out to that person and get them included. Anybody else who needs to be at the table? Tucker, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to ask, because I know the break is planned, and I'm wondering, with the kind of importance of this conversation and the commemoration coming up so soon, whether it might not be useful for those who are interested in supporting Erica and other folks who are going to be leading that event to maybe meet and keep that momentum going. I don't know.
Absolutely,
on this, maybe on this day, same time, same bat place kind of thing.
Well, absolutely. I will be away, but we can certainly do that. And Katie, I will volunteer Katie to arrange that meeting and to facilitate you coming together. Anybody who would like to participate in that, we are happy to orchestrate either that on the Wednesday or on any other day that you want, as many as you want. Katie will still be working, and she is here to facilitate and coordinate our work. So thank you, Tucker, for pointing that out. It just was the official kind of collective impact meeting that we wouldn't be having, but we can absolutely have a kind of a commemoration working group meeting whenever you want.
And yeah, thank you. That'd be. I mean, if folks are into that, by all means, I'll definitely be there. And Erika, if there's any other, meetings don't solve anything, but on the other hand, they're really important to like event production. So if you are hosting anything for planning and whatnot and want to open that up, or just want to connect more deeply, happy to support that kind of thing happening in a larger context as well.
Yeah, I think it'll be important, and to have everyone there, like Joxana, Nidia, and Teresa, and that way we can all work together. It could be like a working meeting, just figuring all the logistics and stuff. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't mind either just sending an invite to a meeting that could just focus on that, or it could just be the RV3 meeting. And the thing is, like, mostly for Joxana, Mondays and Tuesdays are the best time for her to meet. And so it would be around Monday or Tuesday to set up a meeting.
Okay, that's great. And so Katie can be involved or not. You guys can do it. But we can, if you would like, if you set up a meeting, Erica, how about we do this? We can create it, a copy of it on our events calendar and email that out to all the 100 people on our list. And that way they'll know about it and they can add it to their own calendar if they would like to. How about we do it that way? Okay.
Sounds great.
That way it's shareable by Facebook and everything else as well. Kate, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I like all of the ideas that you've captured about creating community at the rental and the temporary housing areas. This didn't seem the right place to get an update on what's going on for the planning, visioning, and long term. I think that this group could still play a role if there's another community that would like help thinking about the long-term future and planning a project. I'm remembering the example from Florida that Kathy Bryan brought early on, where it actually became a HUD federally funded project that created a community of housing with the child care and the playground and so on.
So that is in our long-term vision, and I know that Erica is working with CASA, and there are a number of initiatives around that idea, and we absolutely want to play a role in that. And we're trying to, in these weeks here over the summer, trying to find some traction and kind of getting this going, and as we step into even larger projects, potentially like that one, like that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, we are actively researching community land trusts, how that works. So they're building equity for people who are trying to get to a down payment, all sorts of other forms, and also working on land availability, because to do a project like that, you need to find a parcel, and we're already, with our urban growth boundaries, there are lots of limitations. So anyway, we've had conversations.
That really involves more agency staff, both cities and DLCD, Joshua Lombard, and so on.
Exactly.
But I mean, I have thoroughly enjoyed today's conversation, and I think that the big thing is to work up this event. I mean, this sounds like a terrific thing, and there's been a lot of great thought put into it already.
Great. Yes. And just so you know, I mean, Alex and I met with Josh and some other folks met with Josh this week on land availability and trying to get our heads around how do we get this into action. It's just a little bit in a more of a quiet phase than some of the other work that we're doing, but absolutely still in the plan. Anything else that we should say today? Okay, well, I will just say thank you again. I have a great deal of gratitude for each one of you and what you bring to this conversation. It was really an extraordinary conversation. And I'm excited to see the fruit of all this work that's being hatched and supported here. Thank you. Tucker, do you still have your hand up, or are you done?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Blessings. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you. Hi, Martha.
Hi, thank you. Stephen,
Yes.
I'm just keeping it kind of low key, but sounds like I'll be able, if the restrictions don't come down, I should be able to join Julie Dwyer and Tucker and a few others on the trip to Paradise next week.
Oh, great. That would be lovely.
I secured my agency director's approval because we're on a moratorium for travel right now.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, just sometimes I'm so much behind the scenes, but please know that I really appreciate participating here.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to have you here. You always bring so many good ideas. So
thank you
great.
so much.
And I'm excited to have you. Ellie is very excited about that trip as well. I think it's going to be a really great learning experience and bonding as well.
For sure. Well, yeah. So thank you. Have a great day. I just wanted to share. Thank you.
You too. I think that's great. Thank you for doing the work to make it happen.
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.